Good afternoon, Tiger Bay members. I am your club president, Steve Bertman, and our guest today broke 169 person pay it forward campaign at Starbucks. So if this guy is not Tiger Bay material, I don't know what is. Here in the Tallahassee Democrat, it's a great article about 25 women you need to know. It's going to be followed up by the next article, 25 men you need to stay the hell away from. At the head table today, Lucy Morgan, Tampa Bay Times bureau chief. She's now retired, but she still does some writing. David Micah, executive director of the Florida Petroleum Council. He is past president of the UF Alumni Association and a certified barbecue judge. And more importantly, he's a new grandfather.
Yeah, that's right.
Eric Hamilton. He is the associate director of the Florida Petroleum Council. And to balance all the orange and blue at the office, Eric received 2 degrees from Florida State University. Yay. Chemistry and an MBA. So I think we know who the smart one is. Ed Moore. Ed Moore is the executive director of the Independent Colleges and Universities of Florida. And please be gentle with Ed today. He's in mourning over the death of civility and intelligence in the Republican Party. Wendy Walker, president of Leadership Florida. Peter Schorsch. He will be properly introduced by Jay Revel, the executive director of the Tallahassee Downtown Improvement Authority, and as you will be able to tell, the funniest man on this stage. Jay, take it away.
Thank you. My number one goal in life is to make downtown great again. And I just had a really up-close view of Steve's hands. I can tell you they're pretty impressive. It's called delivering the wow factor. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day here in Tallahassee. Session is in full swing, starting to wind down a little bit. Election season is going on. We've got certainly lots to talk about. We have a very special guest today. We've got Mr. Peter Schorsch here for the latest news, rumors, and pay-for-play headlines in the state of Florida. Peter's our guest speaker. Let's give him a round of applause real quick. Peter is a modern media mogul in the Sunshine State. From humble beginnings as an intern with Scott Daly and Jeff Hendrick to rising to political prominence in the age of Donald Trump. What a journey. But Peter is a man of many words, many friends, and certainly many enemies in Florida's media establishment. His unique take on Florida politics and those who play in the process, as he calls it, has rendered him a purveyor of the world's most valuable commodity, people's attention. Through his online platforms, St. Peter's Blog, Florida Politics, and Sunburn, Peter delivers a daily dose of government gossip to the hungry readers of the people of Florida. His newest venture, Influence Magazine, is like a Florida version of GQ, coated with a juicy layer of political intrigue and much uglier models.
Thank you very much for having me today. I was a board member of My Tiger Bay in St. Petersburg. A lot more retirees there. We don't serve steak because of the dentures. I am particularly honored to be here. I don't see him, but as John Daly was who I first got involved with in politics. John taught me how to steal elections then, and it looks like that he has continued that work in Leon County. And Marianne Lindley, I owe a debt of gratitude for 2 things. She published my first op-ed when I was 18 and about 100 pounds ago. But she also turned down my first op-ed And that kept me from going to journalism school, making $42,000 a year, and being laid off 3 times by now. So I'm very happy that she turned me down on that one. I do have what I think is the best job in Florida politics. I get to say what I want, and people pay me to say it. I laugh every day on the way to the bank. But we also have, and for those who can't see it over there, we have the largest footprint in political reporting now in Florida. We have reporters in Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, Orlando. We have Capitol Bureau. I like to say that I run a halfway house for retired journalists. We have Martin Dykman writing for us. We have Diane Roberts writing for us. We have almost 20 to 25 contributors writing op-eds for us each day. We cover the city halls in Orlando, Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and we've brought a new brand of coverage, a new style of coverage to Capitol politics. I believe we've changed the game. Some people won't say for the better, but we certainly have changed the game. It began about 6 years ago in my mom's basement, in my boxer shorts. I started blogging. I started St. Peter's Blogs, and nobody read it. It was amazing how few people read it. I would write all day, and I could literally see the people coming in on the IP addresses, maybe 1 or 2 at a time. And so I began to set my head on fire. And you do that enough times, people will notice. And about a year later, we changed the game on the St. Pete mayoral election. And I said, well, why don't we bring this to Tallahassee? Because, as Willie said, that's where the money is. And we came up in 2010, and I started writing about state politics. And kind of, Lucy, in a lot of ways, inspired that. She knows that I'm a big fan. We've talked, her article about Southern Strategy Group in, I think that was 94, is a seminal piece. I wanted to write about that every day. I wanted to write about lobbying every day. One of the things that we don't realize, and that we spend more now on lobbying state legislators than we do to elect them. $424 million was spent during the previous election cycle on lobbying state lawmakers. When you add in the stuff like Steve Vancour does or the public relationship, you get up to about $600 million. We only spend about $400 million electing those guys. And that's the first time that ever flipped. It's the first time where lobbying was more lucrative than the campaign consultants. And yet you'll see 10,000 stories about campaigns and elections, but you see maybe 1 article per quarter. It's what Bill Cotterill rolls out every quarter, and it's these firms made this amount of money, and AT&T and these companies paid that much money for lobbying. And we decided to change that. We came up with things like a data scrape that allows us to tell who is lobbying for people in real time. That was never done before. And it has an impact because there was a lobbyist, Slater Bayless. He lost 3 clients in a day. He called me, hey, do you not like me? Well, nobody had ever reported that before, that people lost clients. So every day in our morning readout, we have new lobbying registrations, and people they scroll all the way down to that to see who is being signed up, and you can actually see those data points coming together. It used to be if you lost a client, people didn't find out about it until the next year. We report about leadership races. Again, Lucy did some of this. There were some other reporters. And I go to 11 o'clock at night or whatever time the debate ends. We put out 40-something stories. We have reporters writing about every issue possible, rapid fire. I'm tweeting, I'm Instagramming. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm also wearing another hat as a consultant, as a political consultant, which a lot of people think makes me a walking conflict of interest. And it does. Jeff Brandes is a client, but I write about Jeff Brandes. What I say to that, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask a good snarky question, I'm hoping for it, is I'm tough on my friends too. I've written tough about Barney. Is one of my contributors. I beat up Barney. I've lauded Barney. Charlie Crist, my wife works for Charlie Crist. I wrote more negative stuff about Charlie Crist that Carol almost threw a glass of wine at me after the election. Jack Latvala, he's one of my clients. I love Jack. I love that grizzly bear. But I wrote a column after he, threw another Latvala tirade. It said, "Cry me a river, Senator Latvala." The guys from Southern Strategy Group, wherever they are, if they're not printing money right now, or they're over there. They didn't just buy that table, they bought all the tables today. Southern Strategy Group is one of my biggest advertisers, but they will tell you to this day that the toughest article, other than Lucy's, that they've ever had written was about a legislative defeat they had on a dental carve-out issue. So I give as good as it takes when it comes to that. I'd like to talk about what I think is going on in the Capitol right now, and I think that that's why I exist and what the big problem is. The disconnect between what really goes on in the Capitol and what is reported in the traditional media is so stark. We have no clue what is really going on, because what we read about in the newspaper is about the death penalty and sinkholes and Steve Bosquet. But that's not what drives Tallahassee. That's not what drives Adams Street. What drives this Capitol, what drives that gold mine up there, is Motorola versus Harris over a $7 million radio bid. It's fantasy sports versus Disney versus the Seminole Compact. It's all of those food fights that go on and get decided. That's what drives these issues. And those things are never reported about. They're reported about maybe after the fact. Now, I will give credit. I'm a fanboy. I am a total fanboy. If I could have, my mother would always come to me and she'd say, why don't you go write for the St. Petersburg Times? And I would say, number one, they wouldn't have me. Number two, it would be a pay cut. But number three, I don't want to write about those issues. I want to write about what is really going on. There is great investigative reporting there. Great investigative reporting. Carol Marvin Miller for the Miami Herald, the stuff that she does on the DCF stuff is it's heartbreaking and it's unbelievable. But in terms of day-to-day coverage, what's happening, it took to today. There was an article in Club.Florida about the incentives money. Rick Scott wants the incentives money. We reported about that on Monday. It still hasn't been reported in other newspapers. And so when the session collapses, as it will inevitably do, and it's because of that issue, we will not know why. As far as the presidential race, just because I know that that's what we want to get into, I know it's on everybody's mind. It is absolutely crazy. I mean, and we talk about it. I'm reading SPQR, the story about the Roman Republic right now. And Ed and I talked about it on Usual Suspects today. Is that where we're at right now? Are we on the verge of a strongman? I mean, you've heard people say American Caesar. Is Donald Trump on the other side of the Rubicon while 600 senators are running around trying to figure out how to stop this guy? Because we are one Hillary Clinton indictment. And remember, Hillary Clinton's, the person in charge of her server was given immunity this week. The FBI does not get involved and give immunity unless there's something there. And listen, I would vote for Hillary Clinton. But we are one Hillary Clinton indictment away from a guy who used to sell steaks, Trump steaks, as president of the United States. If that isn't the craziest thing you've ever heard, I don't know what is. But it's great for website traffic. We had 500. When Rick Scott was mentioned as his vice president, and wouldn't that just be the most frightening ticket you've ever heard of? Donald Trump and Rick Scott. And Rick Scott's the most ethical of the two on that ticket. We got 511,000 hits that day from that. That means that's important to us because we get paid via traffic. That was basically $5,000. That's how we paid for the Disney cruise that we're going to go on in 2 weeks. So thank you, Rick Scott. You are putting me back to work again. I do have a couple of thoughts that are just random things that I want you all to think about. First of all, please sign up for Sunburn. Please go visit the sites. Please go to FloridaPolitics.com. But it's incredibly important because every day, hundreds of people Google search for Florida politics, and they end up at our site, including on the days when Rick Scott's on there. I do want you to think about one thing, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but 2018 is going to be busier than 2016. Just let that sit in for a second. We're in the state, Bill Clinton said it right, we're in permanent campaign. We have been in permanent campaign now for 20 years. It's almost like an Italian republic, the way one party wins a landslide over the last. We've had 4 or 5 landslide elections since '94. I don't know if anybody in here remembers Tom Dye, the political science professor at FSU. Tom was my intro to political science professor as a freshman. And I remember in '94, the night of the elections, remember when the Democrats were still in charge, we asked him, hey, so what's going to happen tonight? He's like, oh, well, there'll be a few Republicans that'll win. You know, it's an off-year election because of Clinton. But, no big upsets or anything like that. He comes in on Wednesday and he rips up his book because Mario Cuomo had lost, Ann Richards had lost. And we've been having that kind of election, literally an election that rips up the book. Everything we have known to this point. What do you teach in political science after Donald Trump? What do you tell prospective candidates after Donald Trump? Get online and tweet out the most antagonistic things you've ever done, and that's the pathway? You know, there's 20 candidates in this room right now. I don't see any of you tweeting, including the judge. The judge should definitely be tweeting out good stuff. But 2018 will be extraordinarily busy. I think you are going to see, think about this, you're going to have Bill Nelson up for re-election, and on the opposite side of that, you're going to have a wide open GOP primary. You're going to have the most wide open gubernatorial race we have ever seen. Better than the 94 race that beget Jim Smith and Jeb Bush, et cetera. You're going to have open primary on the Democratic side, open primary on the Republican side. You're going to have Gwen Graham versus Bob Buckhorn versus Charlie Crist versus Philip Levine versus Adam Putnam versus Will Weatherford versus that guy named Marco Rubio that nobody will remember it by that point. You're going to have open primaries for CFO, AG, and whatever. Have you noticed one of the things that the legislature is doing right now? They're creating statewide offices because there's so many term-limited Republicans, they don't have anything to run for anyway. So you're going to have a Secretary of State and whatever other statewide dog catcher. You're going to have as many as 9 statewide races on top of the Constitutional Revision Commission, which is going to put all of its ballot initiatives. And you better believe that there's going to be another marijuana initiative, and there's probably going to be another gambling initiative in this state. So you're talking about the most expensive, most wide open statewide races. And if you talk to really smart people like Steve Van Coor, like Ryan Tyson, and they do some demographic analysis, they will tell you that the point at which Republicans are really going to see their districts besieged, it was supposed to be 2018. You're starting to see a little bit of it now in 2016, but it will be 2018. You're starting to see where NPA is the dominant party in some South Florida state Senate seats. That is really going to be a factor in 2.5 years.